Chapter 13. Flashback. The throne room before the blood had fully dried upon the marble steps. The crown was still new upon his head. Heavier than he had expected. Colder. She stood before him in chains. Not defeated, but steady in a way that provoked anger. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes did not break, despite the guards surrounding her. You believe that by taking the throne, you have gained everything. Her voice was not a scream, but a quiet certainty that cut through the air. No, you are gravely mistaken, Raymond. He smiled coldly, seated upon the throne as though he had been born upon it. It is a throne, not a curse. She shook her head slowly. It is a curse that will follow you to your very end. You will sleep with it, and you will wake to it. She stepped forward despite her chains. The guards tightened their hold, yet she did not retreat. At the very moment you believe you have gained everything you dreamed of, everything you desired. She paused, her breathing steady, her gaze piercing his pride. There will remain one thing, Raymond. One thing you will see before you, close enough to touch. Her voice lowered, but it grew more dangerous. And yet, it will never be yours. A heavy silence filled the hall. It is something you will crave, as fiercely as you craved this throne. Perhaps even more. A faint smile touched her lips. Not mockery, but knowledge. And with each passing day, your heart will rot because of it. His fingers tightened around the armrest of the throne. Do you hear me, Raymond? She leaned closer, despite her restraints, as though she wished to carve her words into his blood. There will be something your heart will rot for, and it will never be granted to you. He looked at her with disdain, a mixture of contempt and restrained fury. He rose slowly, and descended one step from the platform of the throne, until he stood before her. I possess everything. His voice was low, but it carried an unquestionable command. Then he turned to the guards without looking at her again. Execute her. A whisper trembled through the hall, but the swords did not hesitate. And as they dragged her away, she gave him one final smile. The smile of someone who knew the curse had already begun. He returned to the present once more, as though the memory itself had cast him out. Silence weighed heavily in the room, and the moon still hung beyond the glass doors of the balcony. He had finished what he intended to do. His orders had been given. The task entrusted to his most loyal knight. Everything was now under his control, as it should be. And yet, he remained standing where he was, as if something within the moment refused to settle. Emma. He spoke her name only within his mind, as though the word itself carried a weight that could not be spoken aloud. She was here, in this palace, beneath his roof, in the chamber just beyond the neighboring wing, only a few steps away. And yet, why did it feel as though an immeasurable distance stood between them? A distance not built of the palace stones, nor of its long corridors. A hidden distance, invisible, yet stretching between them like an entire world. His hand slowly tightened. He had taken the throne. He had claimed power. He had gained everything he had once desired. Everything now lay within his reach. Except, the thought stopped midway in his mind. The words returned. There will remain one thing. You will see it before you, yet it will never be yours. His jaw tightened slightly. He mocked the memory within himself, as though it were nothing more than an old ghost. And yet, why had Emma stood before him tonight? As though she belonged to another world? Not frightened as she should be, not close as she once had been, but something in between, something he could not break with a king's command. His gaze lowered toward the garden, where they had sat only hours before. She had been there not long ago, close enough to reach, if he wished. Yet that feeling remained, that strange distance, as though between him and her, there existed something that could not be seized by force, nor taken by authority. He breathed slowly. Emma. This time the name was not an order, nor a call, but something closer to a question, for which he had not yet found an answer. At the same time, Emma was in the room she had been brought to not long ago. She still stood near the middle of it, gazing with quiet admiration at the richly decorated walls. Golden patterns stretched across them, like ancient stories carved into stone. The bed was magnificent, far larger than anything she had ever known. Soft, heavy fabrics draped over it, as if they belonged to a world that had never been hers. She slowly walked toward the window. The tall window overlooked one of the most beautiful views in the capital. Lights everywhere. High, glimmering. From above, the sight almost seemed like stars shining upon the earth. She remained silent for a long moment, her eyes moving across those distant lights. Just a few days ago, she had been in that small village, a village unknown to people like these. Only days ago, she herself had been unknown among them, one of those ordinary people no one truly notices. But everything had changed in a single evening. She exhaled slowly and found herself thinking again about his words. What had he called her again? She remembered his voice clearly. Yes, someone dear. The thought paused in her mind. A faint smile appeared on her lips, though she could not tell whether it was a smile of belief or of doubt. I suppose, she whispered quietly to herself. I'm tired now. She said it softly to herself, as if granting her heart a permission it had not dared to ask for. I will allow myself the right to rest tonight. Tomorrow, I will leave. I certainly will. She repeated the thought in her mind more than once, as if trying to convince herself of it before the world could. She drew a slow breath, and her eyes wandered once more around the vast room. It's all right, Emma. Just enjoy this moment. Just one moment. Nothing more. A faint smile appeared on her lips as she looked at the golden ornaments, the heavy curtains, and the distant lights beyond the window. Who would have believed this? Only days ago, she woke with the dawn to work in the village and returned to her small, modest home. And now, she was standing here, in the very heart of the imperial palace. She shook her head slightly, as if the thought was still too large to truly grasp. I am in the imperial palace. Before she could even begin to loosen her dress, she heard a soft knock on the door. She froze for a moment, then quickly turned toward it. Who is knocking? She asked, her voice clearly uneasy. A brief silence followed from the other side of the door, the kind of silence that made her heart beat a little faster without knowing why. Then a calm female voice spoke from outside. We request permission to enter. I am from the royal household staff. Emma's eyes widened slightly in surprise. She hesitated for a short moment, before finally saying, Come in. The door opened slowly, as if whoever stood behind it was careful not to disturb the quiet of the room. 3 women entered. Without needing to ask, Emma could immediately tell that they were high-ranking palace servants. Their movements were calm and disciplined, their steps precise, as though they had walked these halls for many years. In the center stood an older woman. Her white hair was clearly visible in the light, and she wore an elegant grey dress, simple in appearance, yet carrying a quiet dignity that was impossible to miss. The other 2 women seemed younger. They stood slightly behind her with respectful posture, as if waiting for a signal from her before making any move. I was wondering, is there a problem? Emma said, looking at them with clear confusion. The women exchanged a brief glance, before the older woman stepped forward slightly. She replied in a calm, polite voice. I am the servant responsible for this wing. You may call me Prima. She gave a small, respectful bow before continuing. I am the head servant of this section of the palace. We have come to assist you, Your Highness, with your bath, and prepare you for the night. Emma froze in place for a moment, as if the words had not reached her mind at once. Your Highness, she repeated in obvious confusion, pointing slightly to herself without realizing it, as if asking whether the woman truly meant her. Prima looked at her calmly, as though the matter were perfectly obvious. Of course, Your Highness. Emma's confusion deepened. The words hesitated on her lips before she finally said, "I think there must be some mistake." Her voice softened as she added, uncertainly, "I am not a highness."